We do want to take our viewers now to Toronto, where we know the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is holding a campaign event. Let's listen in.
Is not the person that's going to solve the housing crisis in Toronto. I'm troubled by that. I'm worried about that. I think Torontonians should be worried about that as well. I think they should be deeply concerned. And I think in this election, Pierre Poilievre has said that he's going to sell off publicly owned land to the highest bidder and build homes that you cannot afford. That's no solution. And on top of wanting to cut the services you need. So I really want folks to know that, and I want you to know, Aaron, my commitment is, we're not in it for large corporate landlords. We're not in it for the CEOs. We're in it for you. We're in it to fight for you. I'm going to fight like hell to make sure you don't have to live in that fear and that worry that you're going to get rent evicted. We're going to do everything possible to protect families, to protect folks, to protect real people, not the billionaires. They do not need any more protection. We need to protect actual people that are living in this city, and that's my commitment. With an incredible candidate like Dr. Green, with my team, we're going to fight for you. And I'll do that in French, and then we'll take any questions you might have. Donc, un grand merci, Erin, pour partager votre histoire.
Thank you very much for sharing your stories with us, and thank you, Doctor, for your presence and being a candidate for the NDP. What Erin has shared relates to the situation of many people. You're worried because you may be evicted, or you're worried that your rent will be doubled. And you're also worried that there's no place else for you to go, no affordable housing available. Because we're talking about corporate landlords who are trying to exploit people in this kind of situation, and I find that absolutely disgusting. And what is disappointing is the fact that Mark Carney was the chair of that company, and the chair decides on the direction and approves the decisions. So the fact that they decided to exploit people like Karen, they decided that they wanted to maximize their own profits. That shows they have no conscience. They're able to evict people, and I find that very worrisome that Mark Carney was in fact one of the leaders of that company and decided on its direction and chose to do that. He had the power to not double rents, to not evict people. He had the chance to respect renters, but he didn't. He decided to prioritize profits, and I find that really worrisome. This is not the kind of person who can resolve the housing crisis in Canada or in Toronto. This is not someone who is going to fight for Karen or people like her, but who will fight rather for rich CEOs. And Pierre Poilievre's plan is to cut the services that you need, to give big gifts to large corporations, and to sell off our federal lands to rich investors. And he is not interested in building affordable housing. So my commitment to you, Karen, and to everyone, is that I am fighting for you. I'm not here to become a prime minister who helps the millionaires and ultra-rich or real estate giants. I want to be your prime minister to defend your interests and the interests of everyday Canadians. I'm there for you, and my team and I and our candidates like Dr. Green, we're all there for you. Thank you.
We'll now take the media questions, so you can go ahead, tell your name and your network, please.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Christy Kirkup with the Globe and Mail. The Globe is reporting today that agents of India and their proxies allegedly meddled in the 2022 leadership election of Pierre Poilievre as Conservative Party leader. What is your reaction to this?
Well, we had heard of these allegations before, and I had said at the time, and I maintain this, just the allegations alone should have made Pierre Poilievre say, well, there's allegations of foreign interference impacting my own leadership race. If you care about the country, if you care about democracy, you would get a security clearance and find out as much as possible to protect our country. But he chose not to. And the only reason he chose not to is because he wanted to put his party and his partisan interests ahead of the country. That, to me, disqualifies you as a prime minister candidate. It's not someone that we can trust to stand up to foreign interference. And he has shown that, and this new information confirms that. He is not someone that takes the threats against our country seriously. And it is not someone that we can trust to be the prime minister. That's why I'm putting myself forward as a candidate for Prime Minister, someone who cares about this country, puts our country first. There are times that we're going to think about the interests of our party, and there are times when we have to put our country first. This is one of those examples, and he has failed to do so.
And as a follow-up, Mr. Singh, how concerned are you personally that India could try to interfere in this election, which a top security official has said could happen through a network of allies and proxies in Canada?
Yeah, it's a real concern. Foreign interference, as the public inquiry outlined, is a real threat. They outlined in many different ways where it's a threat, and one of the ways is particularly misinformation and disinformation as a serious concern around our elections, our democracy, and eroding or undermining our ability to have free and fair elections. So I'm worried about that, and I think we have to do everything possible as leaders of parties to prevent anything from happening. And I think on that respect, we've pointed out how Pierre Poilievre has failed, and I think that the Liberal Party has to also do everything possible to do their part. My commitment is I take any information I get and act on it as quickly as possible. And I've gotten security clearance. I will continue to get updates on anything that I can do to defend our country and our democracy.
Thank you. Next media.
Rachel Aiello, CTV News. The Conservatives are chalking the Globe story largely up to Liberal smear. You have your security clearance. Is it?
Well, we already know there's allegations. The allegations were in the publicly disclosed document that the public had access to, and at that time it said that there was information that alluded to potentially interference with respect to conservative leadership races. At that time, just the allegations alone should have prompted any leader who cares about our country to say, hey, I want to know what's going on. And the fact is, Pierre Poilievre could get to the answer of that right now. You could get security, could have months ago, could have years ago, got security clearance and found out what's going on. I think the real question is, why didn't he? Why didn't he actually get security clearance and answer that question himself? Get the information and then take the steps necessary. Oh, en français, oui. Je pense que la question, c'est.
Well, I think, there was information in the documents themselves, so just those allegations should have prompted Pierre Poilievre to say, yes, I should get my security clearance, I want to know exactly what's going on, and I want to have access to all the information to protect our country. But he said no. So the question is, why did he do that? Why did he not decide to get a security clearance in order to have access to all the details? He could have had the answer. Was it an attack? Was it really a serious threat? And for years now, he's had an opportunity to get a security clearance and to access the details. But the question is, why did he not do that? Why did he not give his priority to the country rather than himself?
Former leader of your party has declared this election essentially a two-way race between the Liberals and Conservatives. Public opinion polls seem to show that that is the case. How much of that is your fault, and are you worried that the NDP might not be a real player at all in the next parliament?
Every election, this is a question that New Democrats get, so it's not like a new thing. Every election we get this question. And if people are wondering, will I give up on someone like Aaron? Will I give up on fighting for people that need me to fight for them? No. Hell no. I'm never going to give up. I don't care what's going on. I'm always going to be there to fight for people. There's billionaires that have parties on their side. You know, Pierre Poilievre is going to take care of the billionaires. Mark Carney is going to take care of companies like Brookfield, where he was the president or the chair of. He's going to support those big companies to exploit people. People like Aaron need someone that's going to fight for them. That's me. I'm never going to back down. I'm never going to give up. I'm always going to fight for the people that need it most. C'est une question posée pour l'NPD.
This is a question that is often put to the NDP, pretty much in every election, so it's a regular thing. and we're prepared for it. But if the question is whether we will simply stop standing up for people like Aaron, the answer is no, absolutely not. We're here to defend people like Aaron. Those real estate moguls, they have people like Mark Carney on their side. Mark Carney was the chair of a big company like that, and he will be defending their interests. Pierre Poilievre has already shown that he's going to defend the rights and interests of the ultra-rich. And they know that Pierre Poilievre will help billionaires. So for everyday Canadians, for people who really need support, like workers, I will continue to fight for them.
Thank you very much. Next, Meja.
Hi, Mr. Singh, Taria, Isri Global News. You've said the NDP's been here before, but these are some of the worst polling numbers we've seen in a long time. So, I mean, the poll out from Angus said 50% of the people who voted NDP in the last election are planning on voting Liberal. So what's your response to that? And, you know, we've asked you this question repeatedly, but you haven't really acknowledged it. Is there a danger to not acknowledging just how unpopular the party is right now?
Well, I think this election is a really important election, and I think people need to know their choices in this election. And the job of the campaign is to make those choices clear. I'm going to take my job really seriously in this campaign. I'm going to campaign really, really aggressively to let people know the choice. And the choice is really important. We're laying out right now the troubles and the worries that Erin's going through. She's going through these worries, going through these struggles because of a company called Brookfield Investment. And the direction of that company was set by the board. Mark Carney was the chair of that company, the chair of the board that sets the strategic vision and direction of that company. And they decided, in their publicly available reports, that they looked at depressed assets. So they looked at buildings which had cheaper rent and said there's an incredible opportunity. In fact, in their own words, in their report, they said there's no better opportunity since the financial crisis of 2008 than this housing crisis to buy up buildings where people have affordable rent and find ways to squeeze more profit out of them. That was their strategic direction. This is the guy that now wants to be prime minister. I think it is very troubling that that is a person who claims to want to have solutions to the problems that people like Aaron are going through. I think people need to know that that is not the guy. I'm really worried about someone like that making decisions in our country that are going to favor the companies that he worked for and are going to hurt people like Aaron. I think people need to know that. I'm really worried myself about that. I'm worried about what that would mean for this country. I'm really worried about what Pierre Poilievre is proposing, to sell off our public land, to cut services.
We have been listening in to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in Toronto. He appeared along with a woman who was a tenant in a building that was taken over by Brookfield Properties, which is when she says she started facing multiple issues. We do know that Mark Carney has held roles with Brookfield Asset Management, but we know that Singh was also facing multiple questions about a developing story regarding allegations of foreign interference, that Indian government agents were allegedly involved in fundraising and organizing in the South Asian community in support of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's 2022 leadership bid, and that's according to reporting by Radio Canada. With all of that now, we do want to take you to an event with the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre. He's speaking this hour. Let's listen in.
She was sentenced not to jail, but probation. This is the increasingly common story after the lost Liberal decade of crime, chaos, drugs and disorder in our streets. Electing the Liberals to a fourth term in power will only mean that crime and chaos will run rampant here and everywhere across the country. What we need is a government that puts law-abiding Canadians first for a change by making sure that repeat offenders become permanently ineligible for bail, probation, parole, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail. Jail, not bail when I'm Prime Minister. Yeah, you agree with that? Absolutely. And thank you very much to the people of Vaughan, great people in this wonderful community. I want to thank George and Nicole, who are legends in the home building industry, who are hosting us today in their wonderful development. This community has so much potential that has so far, though, been unrealized because of the lost Liberal decade that has doubled housing costs. I want to talk today about my plan to change this and to bring home safety and affordability to communities just like this one. Now, before I do that, though, I want to just say that I want to challenge Mark Carney to show up for the debate at TVA in Quebec. He's running away and hiding because he believes that he's too weak to defend the lost Liberal decade or explain why he thinks Liberals deserve a fourth term. Let's have a debate in French where we put together the choice. Either a fourth Liberal term after costs and crime have gone up and our economy has gone down under the American thumb, or putting Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will build the homes. I'll even pay Mr. Carney's fee so that he can show up. We'll take that excuse away from him. Conservatives will even pay the fee to bring him out if he's not afraid. And by the way, if he is afraid to have the debate, how is he going to have the courage to stand up against Donald Trump? It's going to take someone who's strong enough to do that. And if he's not afraid, then he'll show up at that debate. I'm not afraid, and I'm ready to enjoy that debate with him. And one of the things we will be debating is the Liberal housing crisis. Because after the lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled. They've risen faster than in any other G7 country. Toronto and Vancouver are now the most expensive housing markets in all of North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle. In fact, many cities that have more income, more people, and less land have much more affordable homes. Before the lost Liberal decade, it took 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Now in Toronto, it takes 29 years to save up for a down payment. Before the Liberal lost decade, the average house price in Canada was $450,000, an almost laughably small sum of money. That was when I was housing minister, and those were the results we have. But today, if you live in Vancouver, you need to earn $250,000 to get qualified to buy the average house. Here in Toronto, it's $220,000. Liberals caused the housing crisis by inflating demand with out-of-control immigration and money printing, and blocking supply with taxes and bureaucracy that stop home builders. Now, it's very interesting that the worst housing inflation of the lost Liberal decade happened after Mark Carney became Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. It was in 2020 when that began, and the housing costs in the 2 years after Carney took over as the economic advisor went from $533,000 to $835,000. And in case there's any doubt about this, let me quote from the Financial Post headline in 2017. Canada's housing bubble can be traced back to Mark Carney and his bias for easy money policy. It's not just the Financial Post, it's London's Daily Telegraph, which comments on Mark Carney's time as the governor there, where he caused a housing crisis in that country. They said that he had the, quote, reverse Midas touch. The former, quote, the former governor of the Bank of England has left a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. The Telegraph also reported that just as he did when he kick-started the housing crisis in Canada, Mr. Carney was once again printed too much money in the wake of the financial crisis. And as housing prices ballooned, economists criticized him for a, quote, missed opportunity to make homes more affordable. Quoting again the Telegraph, by the time he left office, Carney had created a mess which his successors have struggled to clean up. But Carney wasn't finished wrecking the housing market at that point. He brought his knack for inflating housing costs to Brookfield. In a report by the Office of the Canadian Federal Housing Advocate from 2022, Brookfield was criticized as being one of the leading North American companies engaged in predatory financialization of the real estate market. This is when a giant corporation like Brookfield buys up rental properties, makes a few cosmetic changes, and then raises rents substantially with the knowledge that residents cannot move and will be forced to absorb the costs. He's still invested in Brookfield, which profits from predatory financialization. How is Mark Carney ever going to combat greedy corporations ripping off our working class when he's profiting from it and when he still has those investments knowingly. That's why it's time for Mr. Carney to come clean about all of his investments, reveal his conflicts, which he admits that he has. And instead, we need a Prime Minister who will stand up for the Canadian people and not for those who profit off of inflation. After the lost Liberal decade, for the first time in the history, the dream of home ownership is lost for a generation, at least lost for now. In BC and Ontario, the cost of a new home, 30% of the cost of a new home, though, is just taxes. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in office buildings than goes to these builders who actually build the homes. It's incredible. And the people who build the homes cannot afford to live in them. That is fundamentally unjust, and it will only get worse with a fourth Liberal term. And home building is down. Toronto, construction was down 38% last year. Vancouver down 16%. Ottawa down 21%. Winnipeg down 7%. And it's not going to get better after the fourth term. Today, the worst immigration minister in the history of the country, who also happens to be the worst housing minister in the history of the country, Sean Fraser, announced that after 10 years helping bring about the lost Liberal decade, he will be running again for Mark Carney. So you're going to have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, making the same Liberal promises as they did to bring about the housing crisis if they're elected for a fourth term. Mr. Fraser was the one that brought the Century Initiative into immigration policy, a policy designed to increase our population to 100 million. With this massive uncontrolled population growth, he helped contribute to creating this crisis in the first place, and now Mark Carney and the Liberals say that he should be back. Now, the reason all of this is the reason why I announced about 7 or 8 months ago that a Conservative government would put our country first by eliminating GST on all homes up to $1 million. I then brought that idea to the House of Commons in a motion, and 100% of Liberal MPs voted against it. They unanimously opposed the idea, and they could have done it. They could have implemented it. Mr. Carney even could have implemented it last week before he called the election. They did not. If they're elected to a fourth term, they will never do it. But the problem has gotten even worse since I made that announcement. Now, $1 million is not enough to get the average home in many markets. It's almost surreal, isn't it? You know, 10 years ago, $1 million would have got you a castle on a mountain overlooking a valley of gold. 10 years ago, $1 million home was for the extremely rich. Now, these homes like this, often go for more than $1 million. It is astonishing. It's almost hallucinogenic how badly the Liberals have destroyed our housing market, and with it, the Canadian promise. But we have to adapt. As Liberals make problems worse, Conservatives push further to make things better. And that's why, in acknowledging the Liberal housing crisis has worsened since October, I'm announcing that a new Conservative government will put Canada first by taking GST, the federal sales tax, off of all homes under $1.3 million. We will axe the tax so that every Canadian can buy a new home tax-free. That will spark 360,000 extra homes every single year, boost our GDP by $2.5 billion, create tens of thousands of jobs for our builders right behind me, and also for our forestry workers who will get back out into our forests, harvesting our wonderful lumbers, turning towering timbers into 2x4s that will uphold these wonderful homes. We'll build Canadian homes with Canadian lumber, Canadian trades workers doing the job. This will mean a savings of up to $65,000 on a new home, or $3,000 less in annualized mortgage payments. Real savings for Canadians will be also compounded as we incentivize municipalities to free up land, speed up permits, and cut development charges to build 15% more per year. We will sell off 15% of federal buildings and land to build homes. We will reject the Liberal Century initiative that would increase our population to 100 million. And instead, we will cap immigration so that population growth never exceeds the growth in the housing stock. We will also cut income taxes by 15% so that the average working family has an extra $2,000 to make their mortgage payments and afford a home. After a lost Liberal decade, with costs and crime up and our economy down under the American thumb, Canada cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. It is time for us to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will remove gatekeepers, cut taxes, build homes, build millions of homes. A government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash resources, stop crime, and bring home the jobs that the Liberals sent south to Trump. We will stand up to the American president from a position of strength. More important than anything, we will bring home the Canadian promise. We will once again make this a country where hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home on a safe street protected by brave troops under a proud flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take questions from the floor.
Karanjit from Vaughan, good morning. My question might not be directly related to today's announcement, but it's regarding affordable healthcare.
Yes.
Earlier, Mr. Jagmeet Singh and recently Mr. Mark Carney stated that policies like dental care and pharmacare would be at risk if you became Prime Minister. Given your past opposition to expanding federal healthcare programs, do you plan to roll back these initiatives if elected?
We will protect these programs, and no one who has them will lose them. And, I would note, let's go through them one at a time. We will make sure that nobody loses their dental care. We will also, on child care, we all believe that there should be more affordable child care in this country. The Liberals, though, have imposed a massive top-down bureaucratic system that has actually meant 120,000 fewer kids have daycare spaces than when they first created the program. A third more families are struggling to get child care spaces than when the Liberals first created this program. Now they're making even more promises on the eve of an election, and in order to get a fourth term in power after the lost Liberal decade. Why do we have worse child care today than when the Liberals took office? Because they've imposed top-down, government knows best rules that have shut down private daycares that don't meet the government knows best model, the one-size-fits-all model, and most of the money has been consumed by bureaucracy. So while honoring the agreements on childcare with the provinces, we're going to give more freedom and flexibility to parents, providers, and provinces to support the childcare of all the kids. Why do the Liberals want to leave kids out in the cold if their parents are night shift workers or work on weekends? Why do they want to leave kids out in the cold if their parents have opted for private childcare or home-based childcare? We should support all childcare options by having more flexibility. Then parents can decide which childcare options they favor. Provinces can decide how to deliver those services on the front line, with more flexibility and freedom for parents, provinces, and providers. We'll massively expand the availability of childcare and reduce the bureaucracy that stands in the way. Thank you very much.
En français.
Sure, one other thing, you mentioned health care. I mean, after the lost Liberal decade, we have 6 million people without a family doctor, and wait lines are longer than ever. We have an obvious solution. There's the low-hanging fruit here. We have 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses who can't work. 85% of Filipino nurses in Canada are banned from working in nursing. This is nuts. When I went to get my eye surgery, because my glasses fell off, so I needed eye surgery, the technician there, he flies to Dubai and does 10 days back-to-back of surgeries there as a full eye doctor. But here in Canada, we won't let him work as a doctor. Then I walked around this, when I went back a year later for my checkup, I found out there were 5 full doctors at this facility who are immigrants to Canada that have to work as technicians when we have a doctor shortage. And this fellow, he actually, you know, is it that Emirati eyeballs are different than Canadian eyeballs? Why isn't he able to do eye surgery on the Emiratis but not on the Canadians? Well, the answer is there's 7 years of bureaucracy he'd have to go through. In Toronto, they say if you have a heart attack, don't call 911. Call Uber, because the driver is probably a doctor. Why isn't he a doctor serving patients? The answer is we need a blue seal. We have it in the trades. It's called the red seal. You can take a test, prove you're qualified up to a Canadian standard, our high standards, prove you're hitting our standard. We give you a license and then get the provinces to recognize that license so that we can have thousands more doctors, nurses, and also architects, engineers, and others. That is the simplest way to get our hospitals filled up with more doctors today and reduce these wait lines. Donc, en français,
so we will ensure that people who are now receiving dental care will be able to keep it. And when it comes to child care, after the lost Liberal decade, there are 120,000 more children. Sorry, 120,000 fewer children who have a place in a child care center. And there are many more families that are having trouble finding care for their children. Why is that? Because the Liberals imposed a lot of red tape and paperwork that is preventing private suppliers and other community services from doing this. They gave more money to bureaucracy, but I want to give more freedom and flexibility to the provinces and the families and to people who provide childcare services so that they can do things their own way, including supporting families where people work the evening shift or the night shift, and including private childcare services and people who provide in-home service. There needs to be more freedom and flexibility for the provinces and the parents, and that will mean that there's better child care available.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Surya from Y Media.
Yes, sir.
So, Globe and Mail has done a story on election interference on Conservative leadership campaign. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, let's quote from that Globe and Mail article. I'm going to quote here. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of these alleged actions. Then I'm going to quote the Hogue Commission, and I quote, "The Commission heard testimony about allegations of the government India interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. CSIS witnesses noted that they had no reason to believe the impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support." Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case. But I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me. After Justin Trudeau named Mark Carney his economic advisor, giving him massive power over public policy in Canada, Mr. Carney went over for meetings in Beijing where he just had secret talks with the deputy governor of the Chinese Central Bank. 2 weeks later, Brookfield got a $250 million loan. What did they talk about? What did Mr. Carney in his role as Trudeau's economic advisor offer China? Why would he be having secret meetings with top government-controlled bankers about getting a $250 million loan while he was supposed to be acting in Canada's interest as the Prime Minister's economic advisor? Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? And given that Mr. Carney knows that he still owns massive financial interests in Brookfield, which owes $250 million to a Chinese state-controlled bank, how do we know he's not going to act against our interests in favor of his financial interests? Why didn't he stand in front of this microphone and confess to Canadians that he owes the Chinese government that kind of money? Is this why he's covering up his financial interests? And given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference when he is so financially compromised? We have never in our history had a weak, out-of-touch leader so terribly compromised and conflicted, whose interests go against our national interests. And I call on Mr. Carney right now to come before a microphone today and explain if this loan is still in place and if he still has those Brookfield assets that he had up until a few weeks ago. Because we cannot trust someone. Could you imagine, while you're supposed to be advising Canada's Prime Minister on the well-being of our economy, going to a foreign regime that had executed Canadian citizens, taken Canadians hostage, that it had already been public that they had interfered in multiple elections. They've done incursions into our northern waters. Mark Carney will never be able to protect our national interests because he has massive financial conflicts of interest overseas. What we need now is not to give the Liberals a fourth term with a weak and compromised leader. What we need is a Prime Minister who will put Canada first for a change. Oui. Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
Premièrement, laissez-moi citer
First of
du
all,
Globe and
I'd
Mail.
like to quote from the Globe and Mail. CSIS, I'm trying to translate this because it's in English. CSIS has no evidence that the members of the Conservative team were aware of the allegations. And the Hague Commission also said that the testimony she heard on that indicate that there was no evidence that the Conservative Party or the candidates were aware of foreign interference from India. Listen, I won the leadership race because I had a lot of support. It was a massive win, and I didn't need anyone else's help. And Mr. Brown, who ran against me, testified before Parliament that the presumed interference had no impact on the results. And I'm very happy that Mr. Carney and the Liberals have decided to make this attack today. It's interesting, after the lost Liberal decade that allowed Canada to become a country where foreign interference is massive and visible right across the country, and now they are trying to use this issue to win a fourth term. But I'm very happy that they did that today because it gives me an opportunity to address a very serious concern that I've had for quite a long time. A few months after Mr. Trudeau appointed Mark Carney as his economic advisor, Mr. Carney went to China, to Beijing, to meet with the vice president of the Central Bank of China. 2 weeks later, Brookfield, the company he was chair of, received a $250 million loan. How is it that now Mr. Carney is still invested in a company that owes $250 million to a bank controlled by the government of China? How is it that Mr. Carney used his political influence to gain access to a foreign government, particularly government that he knew had interfered in our politics and our political system, a government that had killed our citizens and taken hostage Canadian citizens, and he thought that it was appropriate at the same time that he had a formal role as economic advisor to our Prime Minister to go there and do business. And he is still invested in Brookfield. He still owes money to the government of China. So how can Mark Carney protect Canada against foreign interference at the same time that he's invested in a company that has a $250 million loan? This is a threat to our country. He has a conflict of interest. Mr. Carney should come before you today to explain all of his investments and why he worked against Canada's interests in favor of his personal interests. We don't need to give the Liberals a fourth term. We need a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change.
Next question.
Brian Lilly, Toronto Sun. Last night you got an endorsement from the Boilermakers Union, a union that has never endorsed a federal Conservative leader. You've got a bunch of gentlemen behind you in the trades, and I understand tonight in Hamilton you'll be getting...
not suits.
You'll be getting a lot more union leadership showing up tonight.
Yes.
Is this part of a plan that you've got to turn blue-collar workers blue voters?
Yes. But actually, the truth is that, you know, these are the people who literally build our country. And they realize that after the lost Liberal decade, they can't even afford a home. You know, we've had global elites like Mark Carney and the Liberals sell out our industrial base to send jobs to China and the United States while leaving our workers behind. The people who build our homes cannot afford to live in them. Carbon taxes make it impossible for people to pay to gas their pickup truck. And if these guys want to go out for a weekend of hunting, well, the Liberals want to ban their hunting rifle too. The good, decent, common sense values of the people who build this country are exactly what we need to fix everything that's broken. When it comes to the Boilermakers, they are very worried that Mark Carney will dismantle our energy sector through his net zero extremism, and they want to have a government that will put Canada first for a change by approving nuclear power plants, pipelines, mines, LNG plants, axing the carbon tax, the full carbon tax, including on Canadian industry. That is how we're going to bring home powerful paychecks for these incredible men and women who are coming to my support. And I will say this as well. We also need to send the message to our youth that the best jobs in the world are trades jobs. We need boots, not suits. We're going to bring back the $4,000 apprenticeship grant that the Liberals are canceling at the end of this month. We are going to put in 10 times as much resources into union training halls to train 350,000 young apprenticeships so that they can be apprentices who will become journey people. They will be building homes, building pipelines, digging mines, moving our goods, literally building this country with their own hands. They will join with us to bring home our jobs and make us strong again so we can stand up to the Americans and put our country first. Thank you. All right. Okay, merci beaucoup. Bonne question. Je suis très,
Thank you very much. That's a good
l'appui,
question, and I'm honored to have the support of the Boilermakers.
Radio-Canada. Pouvez-vous m'aider, Boilermaker?
Can you help me with this? What's the term in French or in English?
C'est moi qui pose des questions.
Yes, I'm the one asking questions now.
Oui, travaille dans les centrales nucléaires.
They work in nuclear energy facilities. Sorry, the Boilermakers. The Boilermakers, we need more Boilermakers, and I'm very happy to have their support. The tradespeople, the tradespeople's unions represent a lot of workers, but they also give out work. And they will support our plan to put Canada first, including by approving nuclear facilities, pipelines, LNG facilities, cutting taxes to reward work, and particularly providing resources to train 350,000 more young apprentices in the trades, with a $4,000 grant for every apprentice who will be in place under our Canada First plan. We need boots, not suits, to build our country, and this is exactly what we will do as Conservatives. So I very much want to thank this union.
The Boilermakers, they're one of the greatest unions in Canada. I am deeply touched to have them on side, and I hope there will be many more incredible trade unions that train up our people and build up our country to put Canada first. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take a question from the call-in line, and this will be the final question.
Thank you.
Raphaël Pierrot, Journal de Montréal.
Journal de Montréal.
Première chose, d'abord, sur les allégations
First of all, on the allegations of foreign interference, Mr. Carney said today that you still have not received a security clearance. But with respect to these allegations, do you believe that having a security clearance and going through the normal process would help you to shed light on this? And on the same topic, do you think that Mr. Chandra what do you think of the fact that he was removed as a candidate? Do you believe that could be associated with allegations of foreign interference? And finally, on the French debate, the TVA, that's 3 questions. Do you think it's right to accuse the Liberal leader to not want to pay $75,000 to participate in the debate?
3 questions in one. He's trying to get a bulk discount here. Yeah, I'll give him 6 answers for 3 questions. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup de vos questions.
Well, thank you for your questions. First of all, I did have a security clearance in the past, but what I'm not going to do is allow the government to prevent me from talking. I want to be able to speak freely about these issues, and forcing me to sign some sort of commitment to stay quiet is not right, in my opinion. I'm the leader of the Conservative Party, and the Liberals want to prevent me from speaking freely. For example, if they tell me something that is not very important in private about China, after that they can say, well, you can't talk about China because you were briefed on this and you can't share any of this information. So that's the issue. And we know that they are politicizing this, and that's why they did this sort of thing during the last election. But Mr. Carney has to explain how he intends to defend Canada's interests, even though he went to China to receive a $250 million loan for his company from a hostile government that had killed our citizens and interfered in this country and took our own citizens hostage. Canadians cannot trust Mr. Harney because he's always working against the interests of this country and in favor of his own bank account. So I think he should publish or release all the information about his interests and all the commitments he's made through hostile foreign governments. Second, I have no information about Mr. Area, so it's up to the Liberals to explain their reasoning. Third, And they will simply say that they can't talk about it because it's secret. And they're going to do the same thing to me and prevent me from talking about these issues. But fortunately, I'm wise enough not to play their games. Third, on the debate. Yes, Mr. Carney is making an excuse because he's afraid he's too fragile. He's a weak leader leading a weak government who has made our economy weak in relation to the Americans. And if Mr. Carney is too fragile and too weak to participate in a French debate on TVA, he would certainly be too fragile and weak to face up to Donald Trump. And by the way, I'm prepared to pay the fee for the Liberals, so that excuse is gone. And I invite Elizabeth May to take part in the debate. So that excuse is no longer there. Problem solved. And I look forward to seeing Mr. Carney in the debate. Do we need a fourth Liberal term or a new Conservative government that will put Canada first?
3 questions. One, on the security clearance, I've already had a security clearance. What I will not do is have, because I was a cabinet minister, so I've already been cleared. What I will not do is commit to the oath of secrecy that the Liberals want to impose on me. They don't want me to be able to speak about these matters. So they bring me into a dark room and they'll say, well, we're going to give you a little bit of breadcrumbs of intel, and then we'll tell you you can't talk about any of this stuff anymore. So, for example, if they'd given me some kind of cursory briefing on China, then they would say, oh, you can't go talk about the fact that Mark Carney went off to Beijing and had secret meetings where he had secret talks with top government banking officials, after which a government bank gave his company a $250,000 loan, a loan that his company still owes, and a company in which he's still invested, meaning that he is the most compromised and conflicted leader our country has ever seen. He did this after seeing that China had interfered in 2 consecutive elections. He did this after seeing China take 2 of our people hostage. He did this after knowing that China had made incursions into our waters. How will Mark Carney ever protect Canada against Beijing's incursions into our territory, its interference in our country, or it's taking our jobs and our industrial base away when he owes them so much? And I won't be silenced on any of those issues. I look forward to hearing Mark Carney's answers, and I hope that Canadian media actually starts asking him some questions about the nature of Brookfield's holdings. It really is incredible. The media has had some of this information, and I look forward to them actually asking questions. We have a guy who's prime minister who's never been elected to anything. He's the most unscrutinized leader our country has ever had, and he's by far the most conflicted. We're putting it out ourselves from now on, by the way. This is a guy whose company denied coal miners his insurance arm denied coal miners their payments when they were dying of black lung in the States. They lost in court. The company lost in court. How is he ever going to stand up for working class people when that's the track record he has? He used rent evictions, predatory financialization of real estate. How is he ever going to fix our housing crisis when that is his background? I've said in the past that he's just as bad as Justin Trudeau. Frankly, he's much worse, and he's much more conflicted, and he's going to be held accountable. On the debate, well, his excuses are changing from day to day. Mark Carney says he doesn't want to debate because there's a fee. Well, I'll pay the fee. He says that he doesn't want to debate because Elizabeth May has not been invited. Well, I'll invite her. So let's invite Elizabeth May. I'll pay the fee, so Mark Carney can't afford to pay $75,000. Conservatives are generous, we'll pay it for him. But if he's still too weak and fragile to debate at TVA, then he's too weak and fragile to stand up to Donald Trump and for our country. The debate is simple. Do we want a 4th Liberal term after the lost Liberal decade, or do we want a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, we have been listening into Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. He initially announced that if elected, a Conservative government will eliminate the GST on all new homes under $1.3 million. He says that will save home buyers up to $65,000 on the purchase of an average home in big cities. Now, that was the announcement. And then when we went into questions, there was a lot of different topics that were covered, including a question about allegations of foreign interference, that Indian government agents were allegedly involved in fundraising and organizing in the South Asian community in support of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's 2022 leadership bid. That's according to reporting by Radio Canada, originally reported by the Globe and Mail. It is reported that CSIS did not have evidence that Poilievre or his team were aware of those alleged allegations. We know that Poilievre has refused to obtain top secret clearance, so officials with CSIS could share intelligence on foreign interference with him. I want to bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor as she was listening into all of that with me. A lot of sort of things to cover off here. I do also want to point out that there was a question in regards to pharmacare, dental care, and childcare. Essentially, he said those people who have those benefits now would not lose them, but is looking at, it sounds like a reorganization of childcare funding from what it is right now. He addressed also the clearance question. We know that there has been pressure for him to receive security clearance. He says that receiving that would preclude him, in his words, from taking part in certain discussions or answering certain questions. And also the TVA debate, Janice. Just clarity for Canadians, there is an official English and French language debate, and all of the leaders will be participating in both. This is a different French language debate.
Yeah, so you want to start there. So this is on the large private network in Quebec. Just a couple of points of clarity. So this debate was canceled yesterday. I'm not sure that Poilievre today offering to pay the fee would make any difference in sort of that decision. Indeed, the Liberal Party says it isn't a question of not being able to afford to pay the fee. That's not sort of the reason why he declined this debate. So the other, just, it's a small point, but he keeps talking about inviting Elizabeth May. One of the issues, the Greens weren't invited to this debate, of course, in terms of the kind of official debates put on by the Commission for Debates. There's criteria about sort of qualifications to participate in a debate. The Green Party will be involved under the criteria established for that, but TVA, running their own show, did not extend, we understand, the invitation for this debate. He mentioned Elizabeth May. My understanding was that Jonathan Pedneau, actually, the other leader of the Green Party, was the one who might be taking the debates this time. Anyway, but the fundamental criticism of Poilievre, is that Mark Carney is too weak, too fragile to do this debate. This is in sync with the criticisms we've heard from the other leaders yesterday about this debate. But just to get on to some of the other news, the first question was about the social safety net and the changes, enhancements to that the Liberal Party has made with respect to things like dental care coverage for those who didn't have it previously, for example. Poilievre making some news here because this had been an outstanding question. What would happen to the future of these programs that had been criticized actually by Conservatives as they rolled out? But Poilievre today is saying nobody who has a program will lose it. I think maybe some work to do to sort of understand the full shape and implications of that statement, but an attempt perhaps to try to provide some reassurance to people who might be reluctant to support the Conservatives because they're afraid of losing benefits. We know there are a lot of Canadians now benefiting. Dental care in particular has turned out to be a very popular program. A lot have signed up, a lot have already received care that they hadn't received before because of that program. But a big critique launched of the child care program by Pierre Poilievre. It does not sound like that would carry on in its current form under a Conservative government. He unleashed a whole lot of criticisms about things that he said weren't flexible enough for parents, providers, or even the provinces, and seemed to suggest there'd be some kind of an overhaul on that front. Of course, what to do about childcare is something you can follow through as a saga with sort of the Martin government, the Harper government, the Trudeau government. This has been like a long-running thing with vast differences of opinions between Conservatives and Liberals in terms of what coverage is appropriate needed. Poilievre here today saying he doesn't like the top-down government knows best approach and saying there are people who don't appreciate that either and they'd want to address their needs. On the foreign interference front, some defensive positions right off the jump as far as the Globe and Mail, Radio-Canada reporting is concerned on this. Poilievre saying, I won fair and square. Let's be clear, none of this reporting suggested he didn't. Nothing that came out at the commission suggested he didn't. The issue is that there is this intelligence that there was this meddling through financial and organizational activity in the South Asian Committee. Now, according to this latest sort of sourcing, specifically linked to supporting Pierre Poilievre. Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh, Blanchet, they have all received security clearance. Pierre Poilievre has not. They continue to criticize him for not doing that. He repeated something today, again, that is not correct, which is that as a cabinet minister, he's already been cleared, suggesting that that is sufficient. That is not the case. He was a cabinet minister over a decade ago. Getting security clearance is not a one-and-done process that you have then and can see whatever you want forever and ever. That's not how it works. There are different kinds of clearances. Even at the commission, we saw a former public safety minister who had only kind of been out of the job for a brief period of time have to be re-cleared to read back in to testify. That was Marco Mendicino. So even for someone who'd been dealing with information at the highest level much more recently, he had to be re-cleared to even sort of research and testify at the commission, just as an indication of why the fact that Poilievre, who was in a totally unrelated portfolio over a decade ago, why that clearance wouldn't suffice in this situation. He then went on to make a number of accusations about the Liberals and information now under discussion pertaining to their leadership race and the government of India. And he sort of took a twist on that and then sort of launched another attack on Mark Carney related to his previous time as the chair of the board at Brookfield Asset Management. And I don't think we have time to go through all the different things that he floated there. I've gone to the Conservative Party for their sourcing on sort of the meeting he alleged in China. There's more to understand about what was going on with that and a number of different things. I'll just note that when you're the chair of a board of something, you aren't necessarily involved in granular decisions of every kind of company that asset management group sort of holds or invests in. And so for a large asset management organization, being chair of the board, you are quite removed maybe from some of the granular things that are now being thrown around. Nevertheless, this is something both Jagmeet Singh and his availability today with respect to some real estate properties and things that happen to renters involving Brookfield properties, and now Pierre Poilievre, you know, they don't agree on much, the NDP leader and the Conservative leader, but they both seem to feel this is a deep vein that they should be mining to attack the leader of the Liberal Party, particularly because they say there has not been enough transparency about what his personal financial stakes were before he divested and put them in a blind trust. He no longer controls those assets. He sort of did that well in advance of the deadline and the rules required by the Ethics Commissioner. Nevertheless, the opposition leaders, the other party leaders, continue to raise this as something that Canadians should be concerned about. Carney continues to try to provide assurances that he is now a step removed from his previous professional life. So this continues to be an issue in the campaign, and a lot of fresh material now for all the fact checkers to start combing through.
Thanks, Janice. That's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Okay, we do want to take our viewers now to a campaign event in Quebec with Bloc Quebecois leader Yves-François Blanchet. He's been taking questions from reporters. All the leaders are receiving questions about reports of election interference allegations involving the Conservative leadership race in 2022. Let's listen in.
On the allegations in the Globe and Mail story about Indian agents helping Pierre Poilievre in his Conservative leadership campaign, can I just get your general reaction to that story, and also tell me if you feel muzzled because you have obtained your security clearance.
I never felt muzzled in my whole life. I say what I have to say, and I respect that the report which was presented to me contains some informations which cannot be manipulated without care. Speaking about manipulation without care, we cannot prove, but we tend to believe that there might have been some Indian intrusion in the Pierre Poilievre's campaign in order to become leader of the Conservatives. I do not know. I read, as you do. We believe that the Liberals were very close to Beijing. We believe. We do not know. Some people that seem to know in the intelligence agencies in Canada were worried enough about that to give information to the Globe and Mail more than once. It must mean something. They are careless about national security and about intrusion of foreign powers into the affairs of their own parties. Mr. Poilievre is irresponsible of not having been briefed and not having taken the necessary steps in order to be briefed. Like I said a bit sooner, the behavior of both the Liberals and the Conservatives regarding foreign intrusions is like leaving for vacations, leaving the garage door open. Anybody gets in and does whatever they want.
Prochaine question.
Aubert Tremblay, CJSR, la télévision communautaire locale. Vous avez dit tout à l'heure, j'aimerais que vous répétiez pourquoi vous êtes ici, mais vous êtes à Neuville, pas à Saint-Augustin.
Oui, mais c'est à Saint-Augustin-des-Maures que ça passait m'a amené ici. Là, il y a même eu un grand débat hier.
There was a major debate yesterday about that, where the room would be best and so forth.
Moi, je peux vous faire une pub pour Neuville, parce que c'est un
I can do an ad for Neuville. Now, others
so
in
we
the
were
weather
listening in there to the Bloc Quebecois leader, Yves-François Blanchet, and he was responding to a question in regards to those allegations of foreign interference by an Indian agent that has been reported in regards to the conservative leadership race, rather. I'm going to bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor, who was listening in from Ottawa. Janice.
Yeah, just picking up on the Poilievre stuff with a couple of additional kind of thoughts from his point of view. Of course, Blanchet also, given the opportunity to be security cleared, accepted it because he said he wanted to assure himself that no one connected to his team was compromised or involved in any of this. On the issue of whether sort of accepting that clearance would have muzzled Poilievre, the Bloc leader, it's interesting because he sort of has come around to the need to be cleared. But you heard him say there that he never felt muzzled in his whole life, and he understands why there are some things that couldn't be disclosed, but nevertheless has ended up respecting this process as very important. Also, an interesting comment there where he was talking about the fact that, once again, this is the result of leaks from CSIS, from intelligence authorities, but suggesting that these agencies are worried enough this must mean something, about that they want sort of people to know about this behavior. And he was sort of saying that there was troubling behavior in both the Liberals and the Conservatives, of course. Previous, reporting that led to the foreign interference inquiry being called to investigate some of these issues. Previous leaks did concern sort of Liberals as well as Conservatives, and we won't get into the specific litigation of the various things, but this is something that has affected both of the kind of national parties that have been in government in Canada in various ways and in various circumstances. I'll just note, Poilievre in his previous comments sort of suggested that the Liberals put this leak out today. I neglected before to sort of say that we have no proof that there was any involvement in the Liberal Party in terms of CSIS and this information coming to light through the reporting today. That was something that Pierre Poilievre said without sort of proof, at least any proof that he shared with us. So I wanted to just mention that, but also. just on the importance of sort of taking this security very seriously. Blanchet saying this is like leaving the garage door open. And for people at home wondering why we're all kind of parsing this so closely and trying to take such great pains, probably worth saying that meddling in the democratic process by sort of a hostile foreign country is an extremely serious thing to reckon with at any time, but especially right now when we're in the middle of a general election ourselves. So some very serious kind of national security concerns now sort of taking the spotlight in this campaign, and we'll see where else it goes as the day goes on.
Janice, that's the CBC's Janice McGregor reporting. Well, sources tell CBC News that Liberal MP Sean Fraser has changed his mind about leaving federal politics and will seek re-election. He stepped down from cabinet in December after he announced he would not run again because of the strain the job had placed on his family life. So for more on this, we've reached Susan Smith. She's a Liberal commentator and a principal and co-founder of Blue Sky Strategy Group, a public affairs firm. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Arthi.
I know you've been sticking around and been patient so that we can have a quick chat here. First of all, I want to ask you in terms of what we're seeing with the Liberal Party campaigning, we know that a lot of Canadians have said that they want change. How can the current Liberal leader, Mark Carney, demonstrate that he is a change candidate when the cabinet looks very similar to that of Trudeau's government, including this most recent reporting involving Sean Fraser?
Well, it's great news that Sean Fraser is going to put his hat back in the ring to be the candidate again in Nova Scotia in his riding. I think that's fantastic news. He was an excellent housing minister. He's not in cabinet right now, and the prime minister of the day makes up his cabinet from the caucus of the day. So we will see. We have a cabinet right now, and following the election, should Mark Carney be successful, he will choose his cabinet from the candidates of the day. It's a very deep cabinet, I would add, and I think Canadians can have tremendous amount of confidence in the new leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, and as well as the depth of people that he'll be able to choose from. On the flip side, with Mr. Poilievre, I don't know who else he's putting in the window. It seems to be a bit of a one-man band, and he might be chief cook and bottle washer for the entire government. But in terms of change, I think Mr. Carney's approach definitely signals change. It's forward-looking. He's talked about a positive approach. He's got a plan for dealing with Trump. He's already secured a radar for the North from Australia. He's expanding our trade relationships with France and with England. And I just heard, a fire hose of falsehood and negativity from Pierre Poilievre. And that's nothing new there. So I think Canadians are very rightly becoming tired of Mr. Poilievre's rhetoric and are actually looking to the seriousness that